Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Selig, and today I want to talk about my favorite mineral, copper. Copper is referred to as the love mineral or the emotional mineral, as it corresponds to the planet Venus. So in ancient lore, they always knew that copper and Venus were a connection. So copper and emotions, but what I really want to talk about is this copper dysregulation problem. Copper is the #1 cause of adrenal burnout or adrenal exhaustion. So we have an epidemic of our population with adrenal exhaustion. Everyone is tired and fatigued and no one has energy. Without energy, you can't do things. So we have to look at this copper toxicity and understand what is really this deal with copper. Now, why are all the children born with this copper dysregulation, this copper deficiency, this copper toxicity? It's because most of it's happening in utero. The mothers are so toxic, and because they've been on the copper IUD, they've been on birth control, which is loaded with copper. And remember, copper and Venus, copper follows estrogen. They're intimately related, the copper and estrogen. So minerals really run the show, and especially with hormones and the female hormones of estrogen, you gotta look at copper. So we have this copper dysregulation starting in utero, and then we're exposed to the copper piping, the copper top batteries. The industries are throwing a lot of this toxic copper into our system. Now, I don't want to demonize copper because copper is critical for human function. So your body needs copper. It needs it for many, many functions. One of the premier functions is in the electron transport chain, to making your ATP, your energy, on the 4th or 5th step, copper is required to make ATP. So what's going on is copper has to be bound to a protein. That protein is ceruloplasmin. If the adrenals are low and they're not doing their job, they're not firing at the energetic level that the adrenals should be working at, then the adrenals will not be able to send a signal to the liver to make ceruloplasmin. If that ceruloplasmin doesn't bind to the copper, then that copper is unavailable. Then it becomes a toxic metal. So when it binds to ceruloplasmin, then it's a superhero. When it's not bound to ceruloplasmin, then it's the devil, it's the enemy. And then that copper will accumulate in the liver, in the brain. When it accumulates in the brain, this is the racing mind, the paranoia, the anxiety, the fears, the phobias. This is when we get into tired but wired, can't turn off. And you'll see Dr. Carl Pfeiffer, MD, PhD, did a study on schizophrenics, and every of the 20,000 schizophrenics that he analyzed, everyone had toxic copper levels. So it's a huge problem. When you see women with their PMS, it's the copper bioaccumulating in the brain, causing a lot of the depression, anxiety, paranoia. And why do, during women's cycles, they crave chocolate? Because chocolate's loaded with copper. So copper is absolutely important. It just has to be, you got to get your adrenals up to speed so it can send the signal to the liver so the liver can release the ceruloplasmin to bind to the copper so copper can do its beautiful job. When you don't have the right copper levels, you're going to be prone to infections, especially candida and yeast infections. This is a huge connection. So we have almost everyone in our population walking around with fungal infections. These fungal infections are a copper problem. Now, this is why you see the farmers spraying their crops with copper sulfate. You see we put it in copper in the swimming pools and the hot tubs to prevent the growth of these bacteria. So when we have these children being born with the eczemas behind the ear, on the head, or in the creases, it's because that copper in utero was delivered to the baby, and then the baby has all this copper dysregulation from the get-go that we see with the skin conditions. But then later in life, that copper, if we don't fix it, it's a huge problem. So how do we test for copper? This is where we do a hair tissue mineral analysis to really evaluate the levels of copper. So we have calcium, magnesium, sodium, potassium. Those are the 4 major electrolytes that we look on a hair tissue mineral analysis. And when we see copper levels 1.5, and the normal should be 2.5, so we look at this and we say, oh, that's a low copper level, no problem. But when we see high calcium levels, whenever you see high biounavailable calcium, calcium should be at 40, but when you start to see calcium above 80, you know, usually anything above 80, 90, 100, this is 120, we see that I'm suspecting, even though copper is low, I'm suspecting that we have a hidden copper toxicity. Then we also want to look at the zinc to copper ratio. The zinc to copper ratio should be at a normal 8:1 ratio, but when the ratio, we take the zinc, divide it by the copper, 8 divided by 1.5, and that's going to be about 5.33. So whenever you see this zinc copper ratio below 6, you gotta think a hidden copper toxicity. Whenever you see high calcium, you gotta think a hidden copper toxicity, because this copper is one of the main epidemics that we're experiencing in today's world. It's causing the feminization of boys, and we see this going on in our culture today. We see the craziness and the paranoia and the anxiety and fears so prevalent today. We see the schizophrenia, we see the aneurysms and bone deformities, because copper has so many effects on human physiology. And then what happens is, now I'm going to show you my chart, and I'm going into a copper dump. I was born jaundiced. My mom told me I was jaundiced, and I had inherited all her copper toxicity from her years of birth control and copper toxicity. So I got exposed to copper and at a very young age, and I could go through my whole history of how copper has affected me. So it's taken me over a year to purge the copper out of my system. So I knew that I was doing lots of coffee enemas, I was doing infrared saunas, I was really purging it out, I was keeping my pH in a nice healthy level, and I knew that the copper would start purging out. And when the copper starts purging out, this is where most people quit the program, because when copper's gonna, like, all of a sudden, it's gonna be released from the liver and from the brain, and then it's gonna be released from other organs, and you're gonna have circulating copper in the blood, and it's gonna cause a sodium-potassium inversion. So what that means is, sodium should always be a little bit higher than potassium. Then you're going to have this inversion where potassium is going to skyrocket, sodium is going to crash. Right here on me, we see that my copper went off the charts to 11.4. Remember, normal is 2.5. Here I am, copper at 11.4. Look at my potassium off the charts. So there's the potassium-sodium inversion. This is what causes people to quit the program, because when you go into this inversion, this is where you experience the migraines, the headaches, the skin rashes, you experience the insomnia, you experience the fear, the paranoia. Now, I was prepared for this, so I really didn't go through too much of any of the symptoms, but if you ask my wife, she says I was a little bit crazy during my copper dump, which I'm going through. Now my next test, you're going to see this all come into healthy ranges on my next hair tissue mineral analysis to show that I'm purging out this heavy metal. When it's unbound, it's toxic, but when it's bound to that ceruloplasm, then it's a beautiful thing. And then my adrenals will pick up, my energy will pick up, my mind, my moods will all be in harmony. So I knew that I had to go through this, and I knew that it would be a journey, and I knew it doesn't happen overnight. I've been really doing this detoxification for many, many years, but I concentrated on the copper, and I took the right vitamins, minerals, and if you call me, I'll tell you which vitamins and minerals you need to expedite the copper dump and to help with the sodium potassium inversion so you can handle the symptoms that you're going through intelligently, so I can prepare you for a copper dump. Because if you're not prepared for it, you'll have unbearable insomnia, anxiety, panic attacks, migraines. It depends on everyone's chemistry is a little bit different. Some may get the migraines, some may get the panic attacks, but I got to prep you for this so that when we go through a detoxification, we're going to hit the speed bump, but I got to minimize the speed bump so it's doable. And my own body, it's been doable. I've had 1 or 2 insomniac nights. I've had 1 or 2 crazy anxiety type of nights, but I knew what I was going through, so it was no big deal for me, and I knew I had to ride the storm out, and I knew my body would balance out, and it's balancing out, and probably in another month I'm going to run another tissue test to really analyze the status of my copper, sodium, potassium. So again, some of the tail symptoms of a copper toxicity is high calcium, the zinc copper ratio when it's under 6 hitting copper. So we want to look for that, and then I can predict on future tests where we're going and trends that we're going to see. So this hair tissue mineral test is one of the greatest tests for showing me health trends on where the body is going. It will predict a disease 10 years before the disease may manifest itself. Blood won't pick it up, saliva testing won't pick it up, x-rays and diagnostic tools won't pick it up, but the minerals really are the energetics that we want to look at. So the minerals make the hormones, the minerals make the enzymes, the minerals make the bones and the structure. So minerals are the key to life, and when we have a tool to look at the minerals and to see the trends in the body, now we have some real allies to help us deal with this toxic load of metals that every one of us in this country have been exposed to, whether it's the mercury, the lead, the arsenic, the cadmium, the copper, the iron. All these things have to be looked at because they're causing the physiology to be off. And these 4 macro minerals are influenced by the smaller minerals and by the toxic metals, because there's a thing called preferred minerals. The body wants the preferred minerals. When those preferred minerals aren't in the body and you have a deficiency, then the toxic metals will come in and bind to the enzyme receptor site on the cells, and then it actually is doing a job that maybe zinc should be doing, or maybe that calcium should be doing. Maybe lead displaces calcium and zinc displaces or cadmium displaces zinc. When the main preferred minerals are low, then the toxic minerals come in and pinch hit, and they operate at about a 20% efficiency level, and these toxic metals are killing us. So we got to be able to have strategies and ways of analyzing and predicting where the body's going. Then we could put you on sound nutritional protocols to make sure that we're going to dump the copper out with the right nutrients, with the right vitamins. And again, if you call me, I'll let you know what those are. So I hope this little introduction to copper toxicity was helpful. And again, thank you for watching and look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.